So thank you all very much for being here tonight. I'm sorry it's just a few of us, but we're recording so people can watch this on YouTube at their convenience. And we'll continue tonight by Kunga is going to start by reciting the opening prayers for us. So please, Kunga, when you're ready.
Altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla deng or je pe dra no par je pe gig. Darpa dung thum che ke pe bardu cho par je pe tam che ki so je pe. Manam ka dang nyam pe sem chen tam che dewa deng den. Dug na deng drill ner du lana me pa yang dag par zog pe jeng chu brimpo che tho par je. Action Bodhicitta there. Thus until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until it's time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Da she du sang ma ke gi bar du lu na gi sum ge wa la ko. Ma she bar du lu na gi sum ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne sung te ni ma sang da sam gi bar du lu na gi sum ge wa la ko. Short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soko chognam la, chengchu bardu dagni kapsuchi, dagi jinso ki pe sonanki, drola pinchir sangye dropar shok. The Four Immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the cause of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadang nyampe semchen tamche dewa dang dewe gudang dempar jerchik. Dugna giga dang drawa jerchik. Dugna mepe dewa dang midrawa jerchik. Na ring chakdang ni dang drewe tang numla nema par jerchik. The four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. 1. Precious human life. The freedoms and advantages so extremely difficult to obtain accomplish the purpose of human life. If one does not achieve benefit from this now, how could this opportunity come again? Ho, this kind of leisure and endowment are supremely difficult to obtain. When one obtains a body which is easily lost, do not waste it meaninglessly, but rather use it to attain the ultimate liberation, joyous results. It has been said, to be born a precious human being is more difficult than a blind turtle at the bottom of a vast ocean, greater than all the oceans combined on the earth, rising up from the depth of the water once every 100 years, in order to poke its head through a single small wooden yoke, floating on the ocean's surface. Those who have good fortune to make a connection with the teachings are rare, and those who really take them to heart and embody them in their action even rarer, as rare in fact as stars in broad daylight. 2. Impermanence.
Please take a moment or two to contemplate each of these prayers. So Kunga, I'll let you be the timekeeper.
5 minutes? 10 minutes?
Oh, no, maybe just 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Okay. Number 2. Impermanence. Ka. No matter what has been done, nothing benefits at the time of death. Worldly activities, yes, they are lies. Ka. The 8 worldly dharmas are like a painted rainbow. Think you can put your trust in them? In the certainty of death and knowing that nothing remains long, quickly accomplish liberation. Impermanence makes departure certain like the shadow of the setting sun. Abandoning laziness and indifference, blaze like fire in fierce diligence. This life is impermanent, like clouds in the autumn sky. Birds and death migrators are the same, like actors in a play or dance. The life of beings is like lightning in the sky, like water falling from a steep mountain cliff. It departs quickly, quickly. The nature of all phenomenon is impermanence. Death is a certainty to all born. Death can descend any time like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. Quick, it is time to make effort for the essence of Dharma. The 8 worldly concerns. Gain and loss, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, fame and disgrace. Contemplate. 3. The suffering of samsara. Consider the suffering of beings in the 6 realms of samsara. Doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. In the 3 lower realms and even in the 3 higher ones, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. Contemplate. Four. Karma, cause, and result. Even if one were a king at the time of death, one's possessions, enjoyments, friends, and retinue would not follow. But wherever the sentient being goes, his karma follows after him like a shadow. The fruit of one's positive karma is happiness. Suffering is the fruit of negative karma. The inexorable karmic causation is the mode of abiding in all dharmas. Henceforth practice the dharma by distinguishing what should be practiced and what should be given up. The Buddha said when asked, "What was my previous life?" What you are now is what you have been, and what you will be is what you will do now. Contemplate. All right, that's about 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Very good. Now we're going to continue our conversation where we've been talking about the academics. We've talked about the 5 poisons. We talked about the 5 antidotes to the poisons and the 5 wisdoms that can result from applying the 5 antidotes to the 5 poisons and so on. So we can review the text by going to our book, and we can be talking about the suffering of samsara, the methods of karma, and its results, the impermanence and the precious human life as we just practiced. So you can do that on your own. If you have questions about that, I'll be glad to talk to you about it in our next group. Tonight, I'd like to be able to talk now a little bit about the practice. How do we practice the stages of meditation? So if we go to page 18 in our red book here, the practices, the prayers and practices book, on page 18 and page 19 are the method, the stages of meditation to attain enlightenment. So we begin by practicing, by thinking about, by contemplating, using Bodhicitta as our guide. So Bodhicitta, as you all might remember, is 2 words. Is Bodhi is enlightenment, and Citta is the heart. So it's the holy enlightened heart, the heart center. So, and Bodhicitta has 4 main qualities to it that we refer to all the time: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So the question now becomes, what does loving kindness mean? What does compassion and joy and equanimity mean? So to be able to help us to develop a one-pointed mindfulness, how we're pulling ourselves together, pulling our thoughts together, using our body, using our intellect to be able to do this, we use this as a guide. The thing that is the important feature of this guide is contemplating the mother, contemplating our mother. Now, our mother is, for most of us, for many of us, has been someone, of course, who carried us, who gave birth to us and so on, and took care of our needs and as we grew up. Sometimes in some families, for one reason or another, it wasn't the mother that did this. It might have been the father, it might have been an aunt, it might have been a grandmother, it might have been a grandfather, it might have been someone else in the family, or someone who behaved like a mother to us, who helped us. But in the beginning, it was obviously the mother who carried us. So we think of the mother as an example of loving kindness. So this is helping us to develop bodhicitta. So loving kindness is the first method to attain enlightenment. So here it says, all sentient beings, limitless as the infinite nature of space, have been our mothers from beginningless time until this lifetime. Therefore, for these kind mothers, to sustain happiness, it is necessary for me to relinquish hatred and develop loving kindness. So we think of all beings as being our mother. We think that we had many lives. We've been born many times. And therefore we came from a mother all those different times. And we don't know who is our mother. That is in the past. But for ourselves now, we recognize that all beings have the potential to be our mother. In the future, they may have been our mother in the past, and we use the mother that we have now, whoever that was, as a guide to think of those beings as being our mother. We would not want anything negative to happen to our mother. We would appreciate everything that she's done for us. So we use this 4 kindnesses that the mother has shown to us. So the first kindness is that she carried us in her body for 9 months. And she gave birth to our body, and it took a great deal of patience on her behalf to be able to do that. A lot of suffering that she went through, discomfort, and she had to make sacrifices in her life to be able to carry us, to give birth to us, and so on. And so we have respect for that. We have understanding of that. We appreciate that. And so we recognize that as a great kindness that our mother showed to us and to our brothers and sisters and so on by carrying us, by wanting to do this, by having the choice to carry the child, or maybe, she decided that for some reason she didn't want to. She had recourse to be able to do that, but we're thinking in terms that she was able to. We are here now. We came from a mother. That is something that we all share, and that she had to carry us. She had to give birth to us. So she gave up her life in many ways during the time that she was carrying us, and after we were born, in many ways she gave up her own personal life to be able to take care of us as an infant. We were unable to care for ourselves at all. So we could not change our clothes, we could not change our diapers, etc. We had to have a nice dry bed to live in. We had to have food. We had to, whether she nursed us personally or she prepared formula for us and so on. And then as we got a little bit older, she introduced us to different foods that had to be pureed and so on so that we could eat and digest it and so on. So she did many, many things that were sacrifices of her own life. She obviously had some enjoyment out of this. We certainly hope so. And so we have appreciation for these kindnesses that the mother showed us once we were born. And we think of this in terms of all other beings, the patience that they show to their children and like that. So the next kindness that the mother shows is she taught us what to take up and what to abandon. So as we were growing up, we're running around the house or we're crawling around the house, and she had to keep the house to be baby safe, keep things away that were going to possibly fall and break, things that keep small items away from the child's reach so that you don't wind up swallowing things that could be harmful and so on. So all these different things, the mother is looking at us and trying to protect us as much as possible and teach us, the things that we can do and the things that we shouldn't do. The great example of that is not to go near the oven, not to go near the cooking range or the pots and pans that have just come off the oven. And she would teach us, don't touch the oven, don't touch it, it's hot, and so on. But invariably, we all at some point had to test that. And we had to touch the oven, we had to touch the hot pans and pots, and we got burned. And then she, of course, forgave us, but she did everything she could to make us feel better and so on. But the greatest teacher really was our actually touching that hot stove and finding the discomfort, the pain from touching that and so on. So the mother has to be prepared for all that, the frustration that she goes through, knowing that she's trying to teach us to do the right thing, but then at some point we're going to test everything that she says. So she taught us what to not take up, what to take up, and what to not take up. So, our relationship with our brothers and sisters, relationship with going to school and meeting new kids our age and so on, and having to pay attention to the teacher and all these things that we had to learn to be respectful and all this. So the mother, was a prime guide in showing us how to do all of this. And again, maybe it wasn't our our actual mother, maybe it was a grandmother, or an aunt, or father, a brother or sister, but someone acted in that behalf for our benefit. So we recognize these kindnesses of the mother as a guide to understand the loving kindness that this person showed to us. The fourth of this is that the mother sacrificed, and maybe she sacrificed her career. Maybe she was in the midst of going to school and she got pregnant, and now she has to put everything on hold while she's going through her pregnancy, and then after the child is born, to take care of the child and so on. So she had to make decisions that the child has to come first. And many times, if you've had children in your life, in your family, you know what it is, that for the first year, maybe 2 years, you consider that the child has priority for everything. And that the child, wakes up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, you got to get up out of bed, a cold bed, into a cold room, and you have to go and take the baby, and you have to feed the baby, and change the baby, and do all the things that are necessary to take care of the baby. And so time and effort that the mother has to sacrifice for the sake of us as an infant. So these austerities also are that maybe she has to make decisions where, you have limited income in the house, and we have to make decisions about what we're going to eat and what we're going to serve the family and so on. And maybe, having to go and get all the things that are necessary to raise an infant, the diapers that are necessary, and all the things to clean the baby, and new clothes. The baby's growing; it grows out of clothes every couple of months, and so on. And so the mother has to decide, well, I can't buy the things that I would like to buy for myself or for my family, for the other kids. I have to be able to think about that the priority has to be this child. And so there's austerities that the mother has to choose to be able to raise this child. So these four kindnesses, the kindness of having to carry the baby, the kindness of having to give up their life, to sacrifice things in their life, to make changes in their life for the sake of the baby, to how to teach the baby and how to protect the baby and how to comfort the baby when they test those teachings and so on, and they get hurt, they're uncomfortable. And then the austerities that the mother practices in order that we may have enough to be able to take care of the child. Sometimes, an example of the austerity is when the mother will choose to give the best pieces of a meal to the baby, and the mother may not eat entirely because they have limited income or something like that. So there's many different ways in which the mother is practicing austerities so that the baby can be taken care of to grow properly and so on. So these four kindnesses. So when we sit down to meditate and we think about bodhicitta, the first thing we think about are the four kindnesses of the mother. These four kindnesses that are written here in the text. So it becomes something that we begin to memorize. It's something that we do over and over again. This is meant to be as a daily practice. And after some time, we may not need to rely on the book, but we remember, having done this over and over again, the four kindnesses of the mother. And so we're thinking about this, contemplating this, and then as time goes on, we become more and more the embodiment of this loving kindness. So we may not be actually going through this step by step, but if we take a holiday, we go away, we get interrupted, maybe we get sick or something like that, and we have to come back to starting over with the stages of meditation, with the method, we may need to go through these things step by step again. So it's becoming mindful of this when we get forgetful for whatever reasons and so on. So the next one is compassion. That we think about compassion, the second quality of bodhicitta. So this is the second method to attain enlightenment. So it says here, even though these mothers desire happiness, by the force of non-virtuous action, they are tortured in the three lower realms. Because of their unbearable suffering, I develop unbearable compassion. So it's ideal to think about our mother as being absolutely perfect, but she's a human being, and she has to go through her changes and so on, and many times she loses patience, and she may raise her voice, or she may show her frustration in different ways, and so on. That can be very disturbing to us and to other members of the family and so on. And as she's doing this, she's showing anger and being very uncomfortable about this. So we have to recognize that our mother is fallible, that she's not infallible, that she does have, errors that she can do, and we need to be able to forgive her. We learn to do that. We see that. We practice that. And one of the worst things that a young child like that can witness is her mother crying. If you ever seen your mother when she first cries and so on, and how disturbed the young child can be, whether you saw it with your brother and sister, or whether you remember it from your own experience or something like that. When we see our mother, distraught like that, it makes us feel very unhappy. So we need to be able to forgive our mother. We have to be able to help our mother. We need to be able to comfort our mother in those times and so on when she does things. Maybe she has attachment to things, and she wants to be able to do certain things, but she's not able to, and it adds to her frustration. Maybe there's a jealousy. There's a jealousy because the other children are experiencing difficulty in the household, and the mother has to deal with that jealousy. Or maybe it's her jealousy, seeing that the infant relates differently to the father than it does to the mother, or something like that. Many different complex things can begin to happen in the household, and the mother begins to act, improperly. Maybe it's her ignorance, her not knowing how to do things. I remember, young mothers, there's not a really good handbook to say how to raise a child. And many, people have to find their own way to do it and so on, and they make mistakes. And to be able to have forgiveness for that. And so we visualize our mother, the suffering of the six realms. So we've talked about the six realms, the six human realms. So does anybody remember what the six human realms are? So I see Aaliyah's with us now, and I hope your mother's doing well, and you're back home now. Are things okay, Aaliyah? Or maybe she's away and not able to turn her microphone on. So Kunga, can you tell us, explain the very quickly the six realms of being a human being?
Sure. The hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, human realm, the animal realm. So in between, so the hell realm, usually starting from the bottom, it would be the hell realm, hungry ghost realm, animal realm, human realm, jealous god realm, and then the god realm. And then
Very
we
good.
can think of these.
Yes, go ahead.
And we can think of these as psychological states. We can think of ourselves as entering these different states based on different emotional circumstances we're undergoing. So maybe when we're consumed by hatred and anger, and that pain and frustration, we might think of ourselves as being in the hell realm. If we're consumed by desire for something, we really want something, we can't think about anything else other than what we want, maybe that would be the hungry ghost realm. If we're just kind of acting on impulse, letting our needs for, maybe a simple kind of one is when you feel really hungry and you're going to, all you can think about is what you're going to go eat for lunch. That might be considered at the animal realm. But just those basic urges of wanting to eat, wanting to procreate, wanting to survival of yourself. Sometimes we think when people are in emergency situations, we say that their lower brain takes over, and they just think about surviving. So that's sort of in the animal realm. Human realm, it's just, our day-to-day activities, what we're really thinking about, maybe ordinary human life. Jealous God realm, the focus more on jealousy and combativeness. We might think about people who are obsessed with their careers, trying to get ahead, don't care what they do in order to get there. And the God realm is maybe people who are just living a life in which they have all their materials needs easily met, and they're basically spending all their time on luxuries and enjoying their senses. And the human realm is the best realm because that's where we can practice the Dharma with just the right amount of suffering and the right amount of inspiration. And then the hell realms are in the animal realms and the hungry ghost realm, usually thought that those are harder, more difficult to practice in because it's so distracting because we're suffering so much. And also the jealous God realm and the God realm also difficult to practice in because of the distractions, and the God is more positive distractions, it's too much pleasure, no reason to practice because we're too busy enjoying ourselves. And in the jealous God realm is that idea that you're just, wanting to move ahead, you don't really have time, you're not concerned about your spiritual practice, you're more concerned about the materialistic life and, trying to succeed in that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Yes. So for us to think of our mother, see our mother experiencing the results of her feeling like she's caught in those realms. So an example, if she's caught in the hell realm, that she's being tortured by some kind of demons. Something is taken over, and is controlling her life that's very negative and unpleasant and so on. So when we see the mother that is acting very bad, getting angry and so on, we think of her as having a demon within herself that she's taken over by that, and we have to have an ability to be able to forgive her of that, and if we can, in whatever way we can, to be able to show her the love that we have for her, to comfort her, to be able to assure her that this is just a passing phase, and she'll come out of this very well. So our mother, we would forgive like this. The question becomes, can we do this for other beings? Can we see some other beings who are being tortured? Maybe it's kids that are in school, or maybe it's later on as teenagers and we're meeting people in relationships and so on. Or maybe it's when we are getting serious in our romantic relationships in our 20s and 30s and so on like that. Can we think of beings as being our mother who are acting in these ways that they get very angry, as if they're acting out like a demon or something like that? So to have forgiveness for that, as we would our mother. The next one is experiencing hunger and thirst in the predator realm. So this is, not getting everything that they need. These beings are very miserable. They're insatiable. And maybe, we begin to recognize as we grow older that maybe our mother suffers from that insatiability. Maybe, she's always grumpy. She's never feeling happy. She's always feeling like she needs to have more. Maybe it's attention, but as we get older, we begin to recognize that, and we can do things to help our mother. And we recognize other beings going through the same thing. And so maybe it's friends, maybe it's new acquaintances, maybe it's people at work. And just as we would help our mother, being in that kind of miserable, insatiable kind of life, we would try and do what we can to help other beings. Where we have Bodhicitta, we have loving kindness and compassion for all beings. We're using the mother as an example of how we can recognize these problems, these hindrances, but we're also using the forgiveness that we have for our mother for the benefit of these other beings that we meet. The next one is being beaten and eaten as an animal. You know, the animal realm, you know, it's very savage in the way that they can treat each other and so on, and they track each other down and run after each other. We've all seen films on television or in the movies about lions and how they take down other animals and so on like that. Or we see images of animals being beasts of burden who are harnessed to yokes, who are pulling wagons or pulling plowshares or carrying, you know, heavy sacks and things like that, and the animals being put to work in this way and so on. And sometimes our mother might feel like that's her life, you know, that she's had to take on these burdens and so on of giving up her own food and nourishment for the sake of her family, for the sake of her children and so on. And we have to have forgiveness for that. We have to help our mother to be able to understand, you know, that we can alleviate her. Maybe it's helping her to carry packages. Maybe it's going shopping with her and offering to carry the things. Maybe it's sharing food, saying, "Oh, Mom, I'm not so hungry right now. Maybe, you know, you can have this extra vegetables that I'm not going to eat today," or something like that. But to be able to do this for other beings, to be able to recognize that other beings, as you would do this for your mother, you would do this for other beings. You would help other beings and being able to overcome their burdens in whatever way it is. You know, sometimes, like in a job environment, you know, you've learned your job. There's certain skills that you had to develop to get this job and so on. And then people are coming in, new people are coming in, and you want to protect all the work that you've had to do to be able to get this job and so on. And you see these people that are suffering because they really need to have a better job, and maybe if you teach them some of the things that you've learned and so on is a way of showing them, of overcoming their ignorance about how to do things in the workplace, is an example of how we would be helping somebody who is feel like they're being consumed by the workplace for all the different reasons, and it requires somebody to come and help them. So just as we would help our mother, we would help these other beings and so on. Sometimes we get sick. The mother gets sick. Old age comes in. And just as we, you know, have empathy, we have help for our mother, we do whatever we can for her. We help her up and down the steps. We do shopping for her. We do all these different things that we can. And maybe it's having to take care of her. Maybe she's bedridden, or maybe she needs help to be able to prepare her own meals, something like that. You know, so when we encounter people that are in that situation, whether we're in a job that is working with people who are sick or old or something like that, that we think of these people as our mothers and be able to help them in ways that we would help our mothers. So all this is helping us to develop the compassion of bodhicitta. If you can see, this is what we're doing. We're thinking about our mother in these different realms of being a human being, the things that we need to do. So then the next one is the pleasure and conflict in what we call the demigod realm, this jealous god realm. You know, beings who are working to gain their job, to gain their wealth, to gain their possessions, to gain their position in the family, and so on. And they can get very mean-spirited. They can be pushing people around. They can be bullies and so on like that. And so for us to be able to deal with people like that, if we think of these people as our mother, and maybe she's showing these kinds of traits herself, and we would forgive our mother, we would help our mother to understand that what she's doing is being hurtful to us as her children and so on, that we help other beings, we mentor other beings, other people in the workplace or our friends and so on, so that they're not so careless with their pleasures, that they take life more meaningfully. They understand, what the mindfulness is of what it is that they're doing, and so on. So we help them break down their conflicts, that they're in conflict with other beings, out of jealousy, out of desire, out of greediness, whatever. And so we recognize them, and just as we would help our mother, we're helping other beings. We're thinking of them as our mother. And then the last one is as we would see our mother, who becomes selfish and very prideful, and maybe not really as compassionate to us as we might have hoped, that she's not that sensitive to us. And maybe we find ways to be able to endear ourselves to our mother and so on. And but we find people like that as well, relationships, and people in the workplace, as we've been talking, in the family or something like that. And to be able to help them from not falling into pride. Just as our mother, would begin to do that, if she began to do that, we would show her ways in which we could help her. Now, these are a little bit more evolved in terms of psychology and so on. These last, being a human being, being in the demigod realm, being in the God realm, they're a little more subtle. And so it takes a little bit more understanding of this process ourselves to understand how this works and so on. And then we're able to help our mother, we're able to help other beings as we see them as our mother. So all this takes a little bit of concentration, takes a little bit of contemplation to be able to recognize these things. And the situations that we go through in our lives, with our jobs, with our family relationships, and we come back to our home, and whether it's the last thing in the day, or it's when we get home, or maybe it's the first thing in the morning, when we sit down to do our practice, to do a meditation practice, and we're trying to develop these stages of meditation, the things that happened yesterday or the things that we anticipate that are going to happen today may be the things that are coming up that are blocking us from having that peaceful kind of a meditation. And that for us becomes a blessing, because that's giving us opportunity to be able to understand the dynamics of how all this psychology is working, how we see it with other beings and so on. And we're using the mother as an example of how would I deal with this person who I have to go to work with, who is behaving in these negative ways. What if this person were our mother? How could I deal with this? So the Dharma is teaching us ways in which we can recognize this, and teaching us ways in how it is that we can help the person through this. It's helping ourselves because we're developing the method to be able to do this. We're on the path to become a bodhisattva, a holy enlightened being. So these first two, loving kindness, the quality of loving kindness, and the quality of compassion, you see, we're using the mother as a great example to be able to do this. So does anybody have any comment or question about this? Zara, can you speak now? Is that possible?
Yeah, just in general about generating bodhicitta through the lens of love and kindness towards the mother, or the six realms.
Yes.
Uh, in general, and listening to you just kind of go over it again, I think it's significant when you're cultivating bodhicitta to really be able to really understand what the concept of loving kindness means, but really to contemplate on it so that you can give it freely at all times to other sentient beings. And that has just really dawned on me in the last year or so as the experiential component. It's fine to think about it when you're in a perfect situation. But I think the hardest relationships, I think in the West, especially in the Western culture, maybe not so much in other cultures, is the relationship with our mothers. It's a little bit kind of funny a bit, but that a lot of people in the West will say, that is one of their most difficult relationships. Some of the things you just described for your Western audience. So it may be hard for them to start there, maybe needing to start, like you said, with an aunt, maybe grandma, someone else that generates those feelings. Because some people have unresolved things with their own birth mother, but I think it's incredibly profound and simple relative to bodhicitta, like understanding but really what bodhicitta is, the horse for, riding the horse for other people. That fundamental concept, I think, is everything. Love and kindness, starting there, and then everything else flows from there. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Aaliyah, are you with us right now? Okay. You're muted, so we can't hear you if you're trying to speak. So we certainly are hoping that things are well with your mom right now. So, Gunga, did you have anything that you'd like to add to this conversation?
Sure. When I practice this, some of the things that I've that I've thought about is that in addition that these four kindnesses of the mother, they usually make me think about a mother with her newborn infant. So before you could have any kind of difficulties with your mom as far as how she's treating you and how she's, what kind of rules she's making or how she acts or how she doesn't accept you, she did accept you as a baby, and I really think of these four things as really how your mom dealt with you as a baby. And if she hadn't showed you that love, you wouldn't be here. I mean, it takes a lot of care to take care of a baby. Um, you she basically sacrificed her body, physical and mental health to go through the pregnancy and then give birth to you. Um, and there's staying up all night, feed the child, making sure the child is safe, worrying about the child 24 hours a day, and that till that child, because the child can't, is completely vulnerable during that, during up until, probably till they're like, 10. So that's a lot of years before you can start to really have some kind of issues with your mom about how you don't think she's being a good mom. Up until then, you're pretty much, she's doing a good enough job. So I guess I would remind people to think about that. Um, and so when I think about this, I think about it in that very early time, but I also think about it your mother during the middle of your life and at the end of the life. And because my mother's passed away, so I think about what my mother taught me as she grew old, as she got sick and as she died. What did I learn from that experience? What was what did my mother show me through that with her love in that times? And I think another thing we can think about is this focuses on the kindness that our mothers have given us, and thinking about all beings as having been our mother in previous lives. So all beings have been maybe our mothers numerous times. But there's also this idea that about all the kindness that you're experiencing in life from everyone else who's not your mother. And that everything that you have in your life, your house, your car, your clothes, your food, those are all there because other people were generous with their time and with their expertise. There's nothing that you have that's not completely dependent on the kindness of others. And for me, it's helpful to just kind of go through that as part of this, to go through that part as well. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you. Yes. So we talked about that there are four qualities of bodhicitta, the loving kindness and the compassion. And now there's two more, is the empathetic joy and the equanimity. So the empathetic joy, if we think of this third method to attain enlightenment, we're thinking of to view all beings and their deeds that are on the path to Buddhahood. Everything that they're doing, all their adventures, all the things that they're going through, all their changes, that they're on a path to. They may not recognize it per se in the way that it's explained to us in the Dharma, but they are on some kind of a path. And to be able to have empathetic joy for them, because there were times in our life where we didn't have that. You know, we would have been ignorant of what it is that we're trying to do. We're just trying to get by. We're just trying to survive. We're just trying to get through, being a child. We're trying to get through being a teenager. We're trying to get through in our 20s, getting work and having to finish school and starting families and so on, and going into our 30s and 40s and 50s and having careers and so on like that. So as we have to do that, as we've had to do that, other beings are doing that also. And to have joy for that, whether we had the joy or not, but at this time of our life and being able to recognize this, we should be developing joy. We should recognize that when we have joy in our lives, the most difficult jobs become much easier. If we say, I got to clean this floor, something happened, something spilled on it or whatever, it's gotten dirty. I got to clean this floor and I got to get down on my hands and knees and be scrubbing this floor, and I'm doing it with joy. Or if you're doing it with misery, it's going to be a very difficult task, a very unpleasant task. But to be able to find the joy in it, once I finish this, it's going to be so nice. We're going to have people come over. They're going to be able to see this, and they'll be able to take off their shoes, and they'll be able to walk on the floor, and it's going to be very nice for them, and so on. And I'll have the little pride that I did this. And to see other people doing these things and to be able to recognize if they have the misery or do they have the joy. If they have the misery, maybe you can compliment them, by saying, you're doing such a good job. This is going to be wonderful. And people are going to really appreciate your work to do this for everybody's benefit and so on. If they're already joyous, if they're happy about it, compliment them on their joy, on their happiness. Recognize this. See yourself. Empathy means to see yourself in others. So whether it's empathy of negativity or it's empathy of positive, we can see ourselves in others and so on, and to be able to just simply recognize that and be able to transmit that to other beings and so on. So some people will define this joy as a sympathetic joy. And there might be times when you think it works, but the way it was explained to me, and it made the most sense, was that the sympathy implies a pity. That you're seeing somebody and you have sympathy for them because they can't do any better and they're doing the best they can and so on, and there's nothing I can do, but I'll sympathize with them. Maybe I'll offer them something to drink or something to eat, whatever, to relieve their suffering that they're going through as a result of this. But if you can empathize with them, that you're doing that work with them becomes a whole different point of view. And so I think the empathetic joy kind of takes your ego out of it. You're not you're not sympathizing. You're not showing a discrimination of sympathy. Oh, they're not that good, and they have to do this menial work or something. But that you understand that this is work that needs to be done, and they can do it with joy. So I hope that makes some sense. But it's a change in attitude. It's a change in the way that we think about how we deal with other people. This empathetic joy, this having joy, enjoying our lives, enjoying the work that we do, and so on. The second of these things, or the fourth of these things, I should say, was the equanimity, the sameness, the balance that is there. This is the fourth method to attain enlightenment, is seeing all things as being equal. May my mind abide in equanimity towards all beings. May I see the sameness in all beings, regardless of their motivations, conduct, and results. So it's not being judgmental. How people got here, why they stay here, how they can improve themselves, or how they can harm themselves, or how they're harming other people, to see them as you would see yourself, or to see your mother, using your mother as the example. In the joy, you can see your mother, is she enjoying herself? Here you can see the mother, is she in balance? Is she feeling, a happiness with her life? And seeing all other beings towards, regardless of what their motivations are. Sometimes they have selfish motivations. Sometimes they have very altruistic motivations. Sometimes they're doing it with bad things. Maybe they're taking a good situation and making it a bad situation, having a bad result. We talk about karma, cause and result, that you can take a good karma, and because of a bad attitude or bad, a bad motivation, you can change that good cause into a bad result. Likewise, we can do the opposite. We can take a difficult situation, a difficult cause, and transform that into a good result. So it's a matter of being able to be circumspective, to be able to recognize what's happening in our lives and be aware of these attitudes, and being able to control our attitudes, not let our ego run away with us and saying, oh, this is an opportunity for me to get over on somebody because they're in a weak position, and this gives me the opportunity to get over on them in some way or another. So this empathetic joy and this equanimity, this balance, are qualities of the Bodhicitta, of the holy enlightened mind. And all the holy beings, all the enlightened ones, have as their essence, their core, is the loving kindness, the compassion, the joy, and the equanimity. So how they act it out, how they actualize it, is dependent upon their causes and their circumstances, their conditions, and so on, and how it is that they have developed a knowledge base and how to deal with all of this. So we look at the Dharma as the structure, as the medicine, to be able to look at all this, to be able to understand this all in a context of being able to help all beings to realize their enjoyment, their happiness in life, their awakeness to what it is to be a human being and to embrace being a human being. So we use the analogy of the indestructible diamond that is at our heart center, this indestructible wisdom, this compassion, this joy, this equanimity is what this diamond is made up of. This diamond is made up of bodhicitta. And the way this diamond, this is our true nature. Our true nature is to have this loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity for all beings, not just some beings, but for all beings. And so the way in which the activity comes out are these different aspects, the different facets of the diamond. And so these all have different names, and we use the deities, as expressions of these different facets of this bodhicitta. And so the activities might be healing, it might be fearlessness, it might be compassion, it might be wisdom, it might be developing a whole different way of leading our lives as an enlightened being. And we learn that through our studies as the Dharma and so on. We learn that through the Buddha. And that's what guides us through all of this, to learn this. And once we begin to recognize it in ourselves, then we can help other people to recognize it within themselves. So these 4 qualities of bodhicitta are the first stages of being a bodhisattva, being on the path, and helps us to develop this. So we keep coming back to this. Things knock us off balance. We may develop our own, sense of right and wrong, and we're living that, but then something happens to interrupt us. Maybe we take a vacation. Maybe we get sick. Maybe we have to deal with, issues at work or whatever that consume a lot of time, and we get away from our practices, our Dharma practices. But when we get back on track, then we go back to our meditation, to our contemplation, and we start from the beginning. And we find that we can go through these different stages much quicker. The first time we go through these, the first several times we go through this, we're very mindful of the mechanics of how we do this. But after we get proficient at it, then we've memorized it and so on, and when we go away and have to come back to it, we go through each of those stages again, and we're reestablishing our foundation to carry on the rest of our meditation practices and so on. So this is very, very important to be able to establish this foundation. Does anybody have any comment about that? Have you had experience in this that you can speak about where you've gone through having to rebuild your meditation practice because it got interrupted? Zara, I see Kunga turned on his microphone. So, Kunga?
I don't really think I have a specific thing to say about what you were just saying. I've been pretty regular. I did want to comment though on a couple of things you had said with related to the 4 immeasurables. With empathetic joy, I was thinking when I read this, view all beings and their deeds on the path to Buddhahood. I think about our ability to share joy with beings as they do things that are on the path to Buddhahood, things that are wholesome. Like, because people express joy for doing things that we would say are pretty unwholesome. People will celebrate things that we know that's not something to celebrate. So just to make that distinction that we want to share in the joy of people when they're doing things that are positive, things that are helping them towards Buddhahood, versus just sharing the joy with them for anything they do, especially things that might be actually creating a barrier for them because they're not something they really should be happy about. They're just a little deluded in how they're perceiving things. So I just wanted to make that distinction. I think a lot of times talks about taking joy in the accomplishments of the spiritual masters. Like that's easy, right? We can think about people who are already on the path. Maybe people are ahead of ourselves, people who are teachers, and we can share joy in their accomplishments. But then also we can share joy with anybody who's accomplishing something that's really positive. Someone who's gotten a job that they really enjoy, and that job is a job that really gives them a lot of feelings of like they're doing something good for the world. Maybe they're a doctor, or maybe they're a nurse. There's something they really wanted to help people, and now they've accomplished something where they can actually do that, and they can have a lot of joy in that experience. And then the other thing with equanimity, I wanted to just specify, for me, what I think about is that all people want to have happiness. All people want to avoid suffering. All people have this Buddha nature inside them. It's just covered up by their ignorance, and some people it's covered up more than others. So even people who are out there doing things that maybe we think they're just really deluded, and that making us really angry what they're doing, we just have to remember that those people aren't doing that because they want to make us angry. They're probably doing that because they really think, hopefully they really think this is the right thing to do. They're kind of motivated by their beliefs on what is the right thing to do. And maybe some of those beliefs might be that the right thing is to make those people who have disagree with me, to make them as small as possible, to grind them away. And that's certainly a big delusion that they're going to have to deal with later. But I think it's helpful to think about, all people want to be happy, all people want to avoid suffering. That's a way to kind of develop that equanimity. And I read about a practice, and I've been incorporating it into my own meditation practice, where you start off the practice in order to develop equanimity. You think about a friend, an enemy, and a stranger, and you think about your friends. You can think about why they're their friend to you, but probably before they were a friend, they were a stranger. And you can think about that friend probably has people in their life who think of them as an enemy. And you can think about the person who's your enemy. Before they were your enemy, they were a stranger. And they probably have a family and other people in their life who are, think of them as a good friend. Maybe family members, really, you really think a lot of them. And people who are strangers, they all have that, but they have those in their, they're a stranger to you, but other people in their life, they're friends and they're enemies. And not to be so attached to our labels, because our labels are really based on just a small perspective, our own little perspective of this person. And there is a much broader perspective, and there's probably many more people, like anybody that we love and we hate, there's many more people that actually just don't even know who that person is. They're a complete stranger. And we're letting that, our feelings kind of dominate our perspective on the world, but really maybe they shouldn't. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a really great observation and method to be able to look at the equanimity, a friend, an enemy, and a stranger. That's really good. I like that. Thank you.
That came from 11-point instruction to generate bodhicitta. I can send you. It's like a PDF you can get online, but I learned about it from another teacher that I was watching on a video. But I can send it to you if you're interested.
Sure, I would like
the
to see
PDF.
it. Yes, absolutely.
Because it does include, it includes these stages, and then it also has Tonglen on the end. So it's like everything you can do to create bodhicitta all combined in this one long practice.
Well, I'd like to make a point in saying, because while you were talking, it brought my thought to, we sometimes have a tendency, ourselves being Buddhists, that this is the only way. And there's many other traditions, different religions or whatever, that they think they're the only way. And that's a breeding ground for attachment and for hatred, anger, and ignorance, and so on like that. So we have to guard against that, and we have to remember that, Buddhism is articulate and being able to explain the human condition, and that all this is a human fabrication. All this is a system that has been thought of by human beings. Now, to what degree they are aware that they are awakened, becomes an issue. But assuming, or just taking for granted at this part of the conversation, that the essence of all these different traditions is all speaking about true nature. And they have their own words to be able to explain it. They have their own deity, their own energy source or whatever, to be able to look to and to epitomize what it is to be that as a human being and so on. And so the Buddhism gives us an ability to be able to recognize that. And what it says is, Buddhism is not a religion. A religion is usually defined as a human's relationship with a supreme being. And you may believe, you may have experience, excuse me, with that supreme being or something. But what the Buddhism does, it gives you a way to be able to abide with that notion that you have attained that realization or that experience. So it's a philosophy. It's a philosophy of the self, of the temporary self, with the what might be called the absolute self, if you want to use that as an example, with what it is to be absolute, and to see that all these different human inventions and conventions of how we describe how we live with that human nature and so on, that true nature, is perfectly valid. And that becomes part of the, I think, empathetic joy and the equanimity. I have conversations with people who are so adamant about thinking that their way is the only way and everybody else is going to go to hell or damnation or whatever because they don't believe in that. But those are just egotistical techniques that have been used through the centuries to be able to separate you or separate one group of beings from another group of beings. What I think the Dharma is trying to do is to bring all beings together, to bring everything together. It's inclusive. Everything comes together and so on. We point out that which separates us, but also we point out that which brings us together, the error of that separation and how it is that we can bring that together. So I think I think those are important things to remember, and I think that this stages of meditation, this bodhicitta, is the first huge steps in being able to stabilize those notions within your practice. So does anybody else have any other thoughts or questions you'd like to bring up? Okay. There is I'm not going to, if we go to the next page here in the book, there's something about bodhicitta there, and I'd like to start the next meeting with that because I can't do it in 5 minutes. But I would like to bring your attention to, there is a short mantra. It says, Bajra Samaza. Bajra Samaza. And the translation is the indestructible vow that breaks through. So bodhicitta is that indestructible vow. The vow to have loving kindness, the vow to have compassion, the vow to have empathetic joy, the vow to have equanimity for all beings. That's the indestructible vow that breaks through, because that breaks through all the afflictive emotions, all the confusion, all the mental misconceptions, all the habitual tendency and so on. Remember I said with the diamond, it's what the diamond is made of, is bodhicitta. So, and the diamond has been covered up. It hasn't been lost. It hasn't been destroyed. It doesn't get destroyed. You can't destroy it. It's indestructible, but it can be covered up. It can be blocked up. And that's what we're learning to do, is to recognize what has blocked it, why it blocked it, and how it is that we can unblock it. So I think that's very important. If you got your book and you go to page 33. This is in our lineage dedication prayer. And you look at the bottom of the page of 33, and here is the aspiration for bodhicitta, the bodhicitta aspirational prayer. There's 4 lines. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind. Where it is unborn, may it arise. And where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. So this is the aspiration prayer. This has been incorporated into the rest of this other prayer, this dedication prayer, which is a composite of several other prayers. So, so this has been done for us, and so we can use this. But this prayer is very, very important to remember the significance of bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind. It's like when the intellectual mind and the heart mind come into the same mind and to become one mind. That we begin to recognize this spiritual body, this spiritual mind, and they become interlocked with each other, interconnected with each other. It's the spirit mind, if you will, this excellent and precious mind. Where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. So thank you all very much for being here and reciting and giving your insights and experience to share. Thank you very much. And people watching on YouTube, I hope if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share, you can write us at our Buddha Practice Study @gmail.com, or you can call. You can go to our website, buddhapracticestudy.com, and we'd love to hear from you if there's anything that we can do. So, Kunga is the Omze tonight, so would you recite the dedication prayer for us, whichever you prefer on these pages here?
All right, so we'll do a dedication prayer by Lord Jigten Sumgon.
Okay, on page 36 and 37.
Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assemblies of Yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara, nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concern, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as Shraka or Pradika Buddha. May all other sentient beings, especially the enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast fruit of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master of good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dhammata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om Ahum, Om Ahum, Om Ahum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Thank you, Kunga. Thank you, Zara. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll continue to drive safely.